If the water stops flowing tomorrow, most people will not die from thirst. They will die from what they drink trying to survive. In every major disaster of the last century, earthquakes, hurricanes, grid failures, wars, floods, the secondary wave of casualties has come not from collapsing buildings or power outages, but from contaminated water. When municipal treatment plants lose power, when distribution lines lose pressure, when wastewater systems overflow into freshwater supplies, the danger does not announce itself with color or smell. It moves invisibly. Clear water becomes lethal. And by the time symptoms begin, vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, sepsis, the window to correct the mistake has already closed. The modern water system is engineered around a fragile assumption: constant energy and constant pressure. Municipal treatment plants depend on uninterrupted electricity to run intake pumps, chemical dosing systems, filtration arrays, and ultraviolet disinfection chambers. Distribution networks depend on pressure gradients to keep contaminants out. When the grid fails, pumps stop. When pumps stop, pressure drops. When pressure drops below a critical threshold, backflow begins. Contaminated groundwater, soil bacteria, and sewage intrusions seep inward through microscopic cracks that normally remain harmless under positive pressure. The public misunderstanding is that water contamination only happens when it looks dirty or smells foul. In reality, the most dangerous water in a grid-down scenario often appears perfectly clear. The hidden science lies in hydraulic dynamics and microbial behavior. Municipal systems maintain positive pressure, typically between 40 and 80 pounds per square inch, to ensure outward flow through any microfractures. This pressure acts as a barrier. When power fails and booster pumps shut down, that pressure decays. Without active pumping, elevated water towers temporarily compensate using gravity, but towers only provide limited reserve capacity. Once drained, the system equalizes with ambient pressure. At that moment, every joint, valve, and aging pipe becomes a potential intake point for contamination. Soil contains coliform bacteria, storm drains contain E. coli, floodwater contains pathogens, hydrocarbons, agricultural runoff, and heavy metals. These contaminants do not require visible breaches, they exploit physics. Historical evidence confirms this pattern repeatedly. After Hurricane Katrina, large sections of the New Orleans water system lost pressure, leading to widespread boil water advisories due to coliform presence. Following the 2011 earthquake and tsunami in Japan, hundreds of water systems failed due to power outages and infrastructure damage, resulting in contamination events that required emergency chlorination. Even in developed urban centers, temporary depressurization events routinely trigger boil advisories. The system works until it doesn't, and when it doesn't, it fails quietly. The survival implication is stark. In a prolonged SHTF event, assume all municipal tap water is contaminated unless proven otherwise by controlled testing. The error most people make is waiting for official confirmation. In a communications blackout, that confirmation may never arrive. The correct posture is preemptive treatment. That means having redundant purification methods already staged before grid instability occurs. But purification itself is misunderstood. Many believe that boiling water is a universal solution. Boiling is effective against biological pathogens, bacteria, viruses, protozoa. If sustained at rolling boil for sufficient duration, typically 1 minute at sea level and longer at altitude. However, boiling does nothing to remove chemical contaminants, heavy metals, or dissolved toxins. If industrial runoff or fuel contamination enters the supply during flooding, boiling can concentrate those substances by evaporation. The hidden principle here is that water safety is not a single variable equation. It is a layered threat environment. Scientific analysis shows that water contamination during disasters tends to follow predictable categories: biological pathogens due to sewage intrusion, chemical contaminants due to industrial or agricultural runoff, and physical particulates due to infrastructure damage. Each category requires a different mitigation strategy. Biological threats respond to heat or chemical disinfection. Chemical threats require adsorption, distillation, or specialized filtration media such as activated carbon. Physical particulates require sediment filtration. No single tool covers all threats perfectly. The misconception that a small portable straw filter solves all water problems is dangerously incomplete. Many personal filters are rated to remove bacteria and protozoa down to 0.1 or 0.2 microns. Viruses, however, can be significantly smaller. In developed municipal systems, viral contamination risk increases when sewage systems overflow. Without viral-rated filtration or chemical treatment, water that appears filtered may still carry viral pathogens. The science behind viral inactivation involves chlorine residuals, iodine chemistry, or ultraviolet exposure at specific wavelengths and dosages. Each method has limitations tied to turbidity and contact time. Evidence from disaster response operations shows that emergency water treatment protocols rely on redundancy. Field hospitals use prefiltration to remove turbidity, followed by chemical disinfection with precise concentration control, and often secondary storage in sanitized containers to maintain residual protection. The overlooked principle is residual disinfectant. Municipal water remains safe not only because it was treated at the plant, but because a small amount of chlorine persists in the distribution network to suppress microbial regrowth. When individuals purify water without maintaining residual protection, recontamination risk rises immediately. The survival implication expands beyond treatment into storage science. Water stored in unclean containers rapidly becomes unsafe. Microbial growth accelerates in warm environments. Biofilm forms on container walls. Even trace organic residue feeds bacteria. Proper storage requires food-grade containers, pre-sanitization using diluted bleach solutions, and rotation intervals to prevent stagnation. Few households implement this correctly. As the scenario escalates from temporary outage to prolonged grid failure, wastewater systems also degrade. Treatment plants require power for aeration and pumping. Without them, untreated sewage backs up or is discharged into waterways. Rivers become contaminated, lakes become contaminated, wells near floodplains become contaminated. Groundwater infiltration increases during heavy rainfall events, pulling pathogens into shallow aquifers. Many assume well water is inherently safe. In reality, shallow wells are highly vulnerable to surface contamination during disasters. The transition from short-term disruption to systemic collapse is measured in days. Within 24 hours of widespread power loss, treatment plant capacity declines. Within 48 hours, pressure instability begins in urban systems. Within 72 hours, boil advisories are typically issued where communication remains functional. Beyond that, chemical supplies at plants begin to deplete. Chlorine deliveries require functioning logistics chains. When supply chains fail, even powered facilities cannot maintain disinfection. Understanding this timeline is not paranoia. It is engineering reality. Modern water treatment relies on just-in-time chemical deliveries, continuous energy input, and centralized oversight. Remove any one of these and resilience decreases. Remove all three and contamination risk becomes certainty. The hidden lesson is this: water security is not about reacting to contamination. It is about pre-positioning layered purification capacity before contamination occurs. That means possessing sediment filtration, activated carbon adsorption, chemical disinfection agents, and ideally a distillation capability for chemical unknowns. It means understanding contact time, concentration ratios, and flow rate limitations. It means testing your system before emergency conditions. Many buy equipment and never deploy it until crisis strikes, only to discover missing parts or expired chemicals. Evidence from emergency management doctrine emphasizes household-level preparedness for at least 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and sanitation, stored for a minimum of 3 days, ideally more. Yet this baseline assumes short-term disruption. In extended SHTF conditions, consumption planning must incorporate hygiene, medical care, and cooking. Dehydration accelerates under stress and heat. Gastrointestinal illness compounds fluid loss, creating a deadly feedback loop. As contamination risk rises, desperation increases. People begin sourcing water from decorative ponds, rooftop tanks, swimming pools, and nearby streams. Each source carries unique contamination profiles. Swimming pools contain chlorine but also organic debris and potential chemical imbalance. Rooftop tanks accumulate bird droppings and biofilm. Streams downstream from urban centers carry sewage overflow. Without analytical thinking, survival attempts become exposure events. The transition to advanced purification thinking begins with risk categorization. You must ask, is the primary threat biological, chemical, or unknown? In urban flood conditions near industrial zones, chemical risk increases. In rural flood conditions near livestock operations, biological risk increases. In wildfire zones, ash and heavy metals may contaminate runoff. Each environment demands tailored mitigation. Water purification during collapse is therefore not a gadget problem. It is a systems engineering challenge performed at household scale. It requires anticipating failure points before they occur.